Hello class 11. Our lesson for today is lesson number 6, the state of Indian economy on the eve of independence. Now the book that we are using is Frank ISC Economics for class 11, and we are going to see certain topics that this lesson deals with. So what are the topics that will be covered in this video and in this entire lesson are: the first is new tenure land system, second is the commercialization of crops, then we will see the industrial and commercial policies, and in the end we are going to see a few features of the Indian economy on the eve of independence. Alright students, let's get started. Okay, so we will see a few policies during the British rule, and like I mentioned earlier, the first policy that we are going to talk about is the new land tenure system. So basically in the new land tenure system, I just want you to remember the keyword, that is zamindars or the landlords. Okay, and under this system, basically zamindars were the priority. Okay, and they would take they would increase the pressure of taking high charges and high rents, and further we are going to see some serious defects of this policy. Now what were the serious defects? These are: the first is the exploitation of cultivators. Now see, the problem was that the landlords, they actually exploited the cultivators, okay, by charging them with high rents, or we can say very exorbitant rents. That means high rents. Okay, and most of these zamindars, they they were called the absentee landlords. Basically they were those landlords who hardly had any interest in improving the productivity of the agricultural land. So they ignored agricultural development. Okay, they were not interested in increasing the agricultural progress or the development. Their only aim was to get high rent. Next is the Ryotwari system. Now the Ryotwari system talks about a system where many peasant cultivators, they were forced to sell their lands. Okay, so lots and lots of cultivators, they were being forced to sell their lands to the landlords or to the money lenders, and the reason why they were being forced was because of the very rigid demand of high land revenue by the government. So basically government means the British rulers. They were demanding for high land revenues, and that is why the landlords had to force the peasants and the cultivators to sell their lands. Okay, so the next thing is excessive rents. Now basically what happened here is that cultivators were actually brought to a state where they were brought down excessively to the level of poverty. Okay, so that means what happened, that cultivators were not able to save and invest. Their capacity of saving and investment had been falling down. Okay, it was considerably reduced, and because there was reduction in the saving and investment and they had to pay high rents, that is why there came a stage when these cultivators were being reduced down to the state of poverty. And the next serious defect of this policy was agricultural development ignored. Okay, so now over here the thing is that this fact that agriculture should be developed was completely ignored. Okay, so in other words we can say that agriculture was actually not the interest of the people. That means the money lenders and the high people, the high authorities. Basically we can say in other words that the landlords who had the resources available, they were not interested in agriculture. Okay, they were trying to ignore agricultural development. On the other hand, the people who were actually interested in the agricultural development, I am talking about the cultivators and the farmers, they did not have the resources. So there was a party that had resources but had no interest in agricultural development. On the other hand, there was a party of people that we can call them the cultivators and the farmers, who were quite interested in agricultural development but had no resources for that. Okay, now we are going to talk about the commercialization of agriculture. So basically see, commercialization of agriculture means the growing of those crops that bring profits. Okay, so those crops that are giving you profits will be commercialized crops or commercialized agricultural products. Okay, so actually what happened, that there was a very large increase in the industrial output in Britain. Okay, so now what happened is that to meet this requirement, the Britishers had to make make the Indians to grow those crops which were giving the Britishers more benefits, like those crops which are giving them profits. Okay, so we are going to see two arguments towards it, or two effects of commercializations towards this thing. The first effect is the frequent famines in India. Okay, so what actually happened is that when commercial crops were being produced to meet the the competition, we can say the industrial competition of Britain, in Britain actually, the Indian farmers were being forced to grow more of commercial crops and less of food crops. So now when food crops will be less, what will it lead to? Obviously famines. Now what is a famine? It is, in Hindi we call it akal. Okay, so it is a situation where the entire country or the entire place is having no food, they don't have water, it's all dry around, and you don't have all the basic facilities of food and water. So in that situation it leads to a famine. And the same thing started happening in India, that there were frequent famines because less of food crops were being grown and more of commercial crops were being grown. Okay, next effect was the development of rich peasantry. Now in this case what happened actually, that in many areas commercialization was leading to the development of rich peasants. So these rich peasants, they preferred to use their savings to buy lands, okay, so that they could become money lenders. So what was happening, that now peasants, because they are growing commercial crops and earning more profits and they are earning better income from those commercial crops, they were trying their best to become rich peasants. They were trying their best to to use their savings to buy lands so that they can become money lenders, and then they don't have to go through that pressure of being a farmer. Okay, so these are the two main effects. So basically we can very easily understand out of both the effects, we can clearly understand that agricultural productivity remained very low. Okay, thus on the eve of independence, the agriculture sector of the Indian economy was quite stagnant. It was also backward as well as very non-vibrant. Okay, next we are going to talk about the industrial and commercial policies. Okay, now see, there are twofold objectives of the industrial and commercial policies, and one is that they wanted to develop India, and they means Britishers wanted to develop India as a market for British manufactured goods, and second objective was to convert India into agricultural country with the objective of making it a source of raw material. So these are the two objectives. Now we are going to see actually a few important examples of these policies, how we come to know that these objectives were being fulfilled. The first is high import duties, that means to protect the British textile industry. High import duties that ranged from 40 to 60% were being imposed on the Indian textile industries that were or we can say Indian textile goods that were coming into Great Britain. Okay, the next is that British goods were being imported by India, and on them it was made duty free. So either it was kept completely duty free, all the goods that were being imported by India, or they had to pay very small import duties. So this is another example of this policy. Then next is the excise duty imposed on Indian textile industry. So here what was happening, that in order to protect the British textile industry and to crush down the Indian textile industry, a 5% excise duty was being imposed on the Indian textiles. Okay, so Indian textile industries were paying 5% excise duties. Okay, next is Indian shipping industry was also adversely affected. Now see, restrictions were of course imposed on the shipping industry, the Indian shipping industry. So basically British ships were exempted from this, and Indian ships were facing the problem of uh, being imposed with lots of taxes or some kinds of expenses on them. Basically all the transport was being done through the Indian shipping, and because of this Indian ships were adversely, that means negatively affected. Next and the last is the store purchase policy. So basically in this, what happened that there was a very late as well as a very slow development of the iron and steel industry in India. Okay, so there was a negative policy of the government like the store purchase policy, which was very responsible for the slow development of the iron and steel industries. Now we are going to talk about the adverse effects of industrial and commercial policy. There were two main adverse effects, and both the effects are here on your screen. The first is the destruction of Indian handicrafts, and the second is the Indian economy developed as a colonial economy. See, first point is destruction of Indian handicrafts. Actually, Indian handicrafts were considered to be of a very high reputation. The silk of India, Banarsi silk and muslin from Dhaka and shawls from Kashmir. These were all those textiles and textile handicrafts which were very, having a very high reputation in the entire world. Now, what happened that there were some unfavorable conditions that led to the decline of these handicrafts, and when this decline took place, it automatically led to the unemployment of people. Why? Because when these Indian handicrafts were stopped and there was a destruction in the Indian handicrafts, automatically all the people working in these handicraft textile industries, they were set free. They were asked to leave, and when they were asked to leave, of course they will be unemployed. Okay, now the next point is that India became a very classical example of a colonial economy. Okay, so basically to become a colonial country, it meant that India not only provided market for manufactured goods, okay, for the Britishers, but it also acted as an important source of raw materials for the British rulers. So it was not just a place where we became a market for manufactured goods, but we also became an important source for raw materials for the British rulers. That is why we can say that India became a very classical example of a colonial economy. Now we are going to see the main features of the Indian economy on the eve of independence. So what are the things that we get to know about the Indian economy when we got independence? Okay, so the first thing is the colonial economy. So basically, like I earlier mentioned, India became a very big market, okay, for the industrial products that were manufactured in Britain, and along with that we also became a big source of raw materials. We did not become big source of raw material for India, but we became a source of raw materials for Britain. Okay, now next is a stagnant economy. So basically the Indian economy was very backward. It was considered to be very stagnant, very slow during the time of independence, and we can also say that the per capita income was not only very low but also stagnant. That means it was just at one percentage, and it was not growing at all. Okay, so Indian economy remained more or less a very stagnant economy. It was called a very low, a very non-vibrant and a very backward economy at that point of time. Next is poor and backward economy. Now see, British officials agreed that the Indian economy was very much into poverty. Okay, so we can in other words say that we were sinking into poverty. Alright, so what it means is that our per capita consumption was very low. And when our per capita consumption was low, it meant that our standard of living was also low. Okay, and people could hardly, try to maintain and get their basic, needs fulfilled. They were not even able to fulfill their basic needs like, food, health, education. On the other hand, we also see that we come to know that our economy was backward and poor because because of the high birth and death rates, also because of the natural calamities that took place in our country, also because of the illiteracy in our country. So these are the indicators that showed that there was enough poverty and backwardness in our economy. The next is stagnant and traditional agriculture. Now, agriculture actually suffered from a lot of low productivity. We already saw that in the policies, right? And we had a very highly exploitative kind of a land tenure system. We know that also. We also know that the kinds of technology and the techniques we used for agricultural production was very traditional. It was not modern at all. Okay, and because commercialization of crops was being done, therefore we can say that a lot of famines took place in our country. That is why we can say that our agricultural sector, particularly at that point of time, was very stagnant and a very traditional kind of an agriculture sector. Okay, so basically we know that high rents were being imposed on the farmers, and that led the farmers to remain in poverty. So these are the things that could show that yes, our agriculture was very stagnant and traditional. Next we see is the weak industrial structure. Our Indian industrial structure at that point of time was very weak. Okay, Indian handicrafts, they were being, they were declining, and because they were declining, it led to unemployment, and these unemployed artisans, they started shifting back to agriculture because they did not have work in the industries, and therefore they had to go back to their villages, they had to go back to their places to work on agricultural fields, and this led to a situation of back to land movement at that time. Okay, so there was like a deliberate hindrance from the British government leading to deindustrialization, and that further led to unemployment. Next feature that we see of Indian economy on the eve of independence is the traditional structure of Indian economy. Now we come to know that Indian economy was of a very traditional kind. The first thing that we see in this is the composition of national income. Okay, so what we see here is that according to the reports of National Income Committee of 1951, we come to know that the primary sector contributed about 52% of national income, industrial sector contributed around 19%, and service sector contributed around 29%. So the primary sector, that is the agricultural sector, is contributing more as compared to the service sector and the industrial sector. Okay, so this shows that the national income was also of a very traditional kind, because agriculture was also considered to be very traditional at that point of time. And the next thing we see in this is the occupational structure. Okay, so we see that 72% people of people from our total population were into primary sector. 11% people of our working population were into the industrial sector or the secondary sector, and 17% were engaged in the service sector. Okay, so we see that most of our people were into the occupation of agriculture or the primary sector. So this again takes us a step back, and it shows that Indian economy had a structure of a very traditional kind. Okay, whether it was the national income, whether it was the occupation, it was very, very traditional, because more contribution was from the traditional sector, that is the primary sector. Okay, next we also see that Indian economy at the time of independence was more of rural and agricultural kind in its character. So it was less urban and more rural. Okay, so we can actually say that around 85% of our people, of our population, was situated in the villages. So all of this together shows that our Indian economy was of a very traditional structure. Next we see is the semi-feudal economy. Okay, now feudalism is actually something where there is a system of land ownership. Okay, it's a very dominant social system. So what happened that at that point of time, the zamindari system, it divided the society into two classes. in the agricultural sector. One was the zamindars who exploited the peasants, okay, by charging them with high rents, and the other group or the other class was of the poor people, of the exploited people, of the landless people, and of the cultivators. Okay, so this division of the society into two classes, the capitalist class and the labor class, all of this became a feudal system which, along with capitalism or a capitalist system, became very prominent at that time. That is why we can say that on the eve of independence, our Indian economy was a feudal economy. Okay. Next is the dismal demographic profile. See, demography means things related to the population. Okay, so we can say that both birth rate as well as the death rates, they were very high, around 48 and 40 per thousand respectively. That means birth rate was 48 per thousand and death rate was 40 per thousand. On the other hand, we see that infant mortality rate was also very high. Okay, and around 32 years was the life expectancy, which is very low. I mean, people living only till the age of 32 is very low. It is a very low life expectancy rate. So this was the demographic profile of our country at that time. High death rate, too many people dying, too many people being born. They are born and then they die in some time. And people are expected to live only up to around 32 years of age, which is very less. Then infant mortality rate was very high. So these are the things that showed that our demographic profile was very poor at that time. Next and the last feature is the unsatisfactory infrastructure. That means we are talking about social as well as economic infrastructure. Now, social infrastructure includes things like education, health facilities. These are all factors that come under the social infrastructure. And things that come in economic infrastructure are things like irrigation facilities, okay, power and energy, banking and financial institutions, transport, communication. These are all economic infrastructure. So all of this was not established at that time. It was still to grow and develop. So it was quite unsatisfactory, in other words. This was the entire state of our country. Okay, so there were low and constant levels of per capita income. We can say that there was stagnant and traditional agriculture. There were traditional methods of cultivation. Ultimately, what we can come out with is the entire infrastructure of our Indian economy showed that we were still in backwardness during the time of British period. Now students, there is a video that you're going to see which will help you to understand the entire lesson in short. So please watch the video and enjoy.
Indian economy on the eve of independence. Indian economy was in bad shape when British left India. Their primary goal was to reduce the status of India to mere exporter of raw materials to Britain and importer of finished goods from Britain. This unjustly enriched Britain. Thus, in 1947, when British transferred power back to India, we inherited a crippled economy. The growth at the aggregate real output, GDP, was less than 2% during the first half of the 20th century, and growth of per capita income was just 0.5%. Handicrafts industries ruined due to heavy taxation and policies of government, colonial, as the industry faced heavy competition from Britain imports. Land revenue system. The British introduced zamindari system. The zamindars were recognized as permanent owners of the soil. They were to pay a fixed sum to the government as land revenue, who were absolutely free to extract revenue as much as they could. British did commercialization of agriculture, hence no food crop was grown, and these were used by British industries. No modern farming technology was available. Industrial sector. Policies of colonial government led to deindustrialization, and India became an importer of finished goods from Britain and also a supplier of raw materials to Britain. Though India had no capital goods industries, but still some industries like paper industry were established after World War, and Tisco, Tata Iron and Steel Company, were established in 1907. use of these industries was limited to public sector like railways. India's export was more than import, but this didn't benefited India as more than half of the trade was restricted to Britain and rest was with China, Sri Lanka and Iran. Due to this, several commodities were not available in the market for common people. Also, this trade surplus was used by Britain to make payments such as war, etc. The British administration could not do much about this because of lack of funds. The roads were built with the aim of mobilizing the army within India and to transport the various raw materials. The railway was introduced in 1850. They helped to break geographical and cultural barriers, aided commercialization of agriculture, expanded volume of trade. Inland trade and sea lanes were also developed. However, some of the inland waterways like the coast canal on the Odisha coast proved uneconomical because it could not match the railways which managed to traverse the region parallel to the canal. Postal services and telegraph was also introduced in order to maintain law and order. Now let's know about the demographic transition and about first census. It is the transition from high birth and death rates to lower birth and death rates as a region develops from a pre-industrial to an industrialized economic system. The first census was done in 1881. After that, it was done in every 10 years. Second stage of demographic transition began in 1921. During this time, neither the total population nor the population growth was very high. Death rate and birth rates both were very high. Infant mortality rate was 218 per thousand. Therefore, population growth was less. Life expectancy was 32 years. Literacy rate was 7% in females and 16% in males. Attempts were also made to estimate the per capita income by people like R.C. Desai, William Digby and V.K.R.V. Rao. In these, V.K.R.V. Rao's contributions were considered most significant. Thus, Indian economy was in bad shape and infrastructure facilities required upgradation.
Now students, there are some questions that I want you to do in your registers. Please follow these questions and do them in your registers. The first is, how did the British transform India into a colonial economy? We have discussed about it in the lesson where India was converted into a colonial economy. Next, what was the aim of the British commercial policy? So you have to tell about the British commercial policy having twofold aims. One was that they wanted to develop India as a market for British manufactured goods, and second, that they wanted to convert India into an agricultural country. Next is to discuss the defects of the land tenure system. Then lastly, you have to tell the main features of the Indian economy on the eve of independence. I hope you will do all your work, watch the video, enjoy it, study it like a story, and all the best students.